I work for Case and Associates. So we are land and water experts. One of our, I guess we have 3 divisions. I'm part of the habitat division, and I do a lot of the pond digging. I also do prairie planting, and then we also have invasive species that we get rid of. We have a pond division, and they are the people that come out and will do a consult on your pond. They also come out and treat your pond. And then we have a lake division who kind of does the same thing with the ponds, but obviously the lake, bigger scale. And then they also do surveys of the fish in your pond or fish in your lake. So starting a pond, or starting with digging a pond, like you have a pond or you want a pond, where do you start kind of thing? Well, you can contact one of the pond consulting companies, especially Case and Associates. We cover the whole state. We also cover Upper Michigan, and then we also cover Northern Illinois. But we'll come out, we'll talk to you and ask you what kind of pond would you like. We do a lot of swimming ponds and a lot of recreational ponds. Fishing ponds is another big thing for us. And then we additionally do, this last fall we built some dog training ponds. So they're kind of really weird shaped. There's one like small little circle one. There's one that kind of looks like a rabbit ears, and then I don't know, remember what the shape of the other one like reminds us of, but it literally has like 5 or 6 little pockets and bays, and that's specifically for waterfowl training dogs. So that's kind of a unique little pond to build. So we'll talk to you about what kind of pond you want, and then we'll figure out where at your property do you want the pond, and then I can look over permits, and if you need a permit, generally permits are needed if it is over an acre in size. This is for the state regulations. Over an acre in size, or if it's in a wetland. We do dig wetland scrapes. Then you just have to follow the permit guidelines for that. In addition to looking at state regulations, I also help you look into city and other small municipal ordeals and ordinances, and make sure that everything is followed, and for you to be able to get that pond permit. Next thing that we do is come out and dig a test hole. You got to make sure that we can actually dig a pond where you want the pond. We usually do 3 or 4 test holes about the depth that the pond's going to be. Our test holes are normally about 12 feet or so, just so we can get a good idea of the composition of what we're going to be taking out. In addition to that, we kind of see like, okay, well, do you want a beach around your pond? Our last pond that we built, we had most of the sand that was taken out, we actually were able to put back around the pond, and that kind of cut the cost a little bit because we didn't have to bring as much sand back in. Otherwise, we usually have washed beach sand brought in. Another thing about test holes is that, like I said, we got to make sure that we can actually dig there. I wasn't working with Case and Associates when this happened, but my supervisor informed me that they got 3 feet deep and there was nothing but bedrock there. So we're like, you can't really dig a hole there for a pond. So that project was kind of put off. But luckily, the last couple ponds that we've been digging, they've been a soil or clay composition. We do offer putting in pond liners. That also depends on the composition. The dog training ponds I mentioned earlier, those are all just within the water table, so they're filled naturally with the water table and with rainwater, and then kind of held there because of the clay composition that the soil is made of. So after we figure out where your pond's going to go, what the soil is composed of, we've set a schedule as to when we're going to come and make a big old mess in your yard or wherever you're going to dig your pond. And you stake it out. It's not as easy as just going and digging a hole in the ground. There's usually a lot of mathematics and slope and that to be followed, along with regulations that we need to follow with the state or city ordinances. So we'll come out, and then we usually separate the topsoil from the clay or other material, because we will usually put it around the outside of your pond and use it as a berm, and make sure that is all level. And this process, depending on how big the pond is, most of the ponds we dig are about 1/4 acre to an acre, just because we don't have very large equipment. We have big enough equipment, but I guess an example would be The bucket that we have now is a half a yard, and then we have another pond being dug currently, and I can stand in that bucket and like crouch down like this, and there's still plenty of room around like this. That's a 5-yard bucket. So that is being dug for a just over 2-acre pond, I believe. So the process of after the pond's all dug, most of the time we do have the pond liners installed. That's kind of a big process in itself. Pond liners usually last between 25 to 30 years. So we'll install the pond liner. It's a 28 to 31 millimeter thick kind of a plastic material. In order for us to cover your pond with it, we usually roll it out on one side, and then we'll either have machinery or we'll have we have about 9 or 10 people that work at the company with me, and they all show up on this day because we need all the manpower we can get, because these things are really heavy, even if they are only a half an acre in size. There's just this big piece of plastic, and then we go off the command of one person and walk really slow. I usually walk on the outside so I don't have to go down the pond and then back up the other side because I have little legs. So I'd use that to my advantage. And then before the pond liner is put on, we actually put a trench around the middle of the berm, and the berm's about 12 feet wide, so we'll put a trench around that, and that's about 16 inches or so deep, maybe 12 inches deep, and then that kind of is the placeholder for the trench, or for the liner to hold the pond liner in place. And then if you want a beach on your pond, we do, like I said, we do a lot of beaches. We'll put geotextile over, and that kind of, since the pond liner is a very slippery material, we'll put that geotextile down, and that kind of holds the sand in place so it doesn't just slide all the way down to the bottom of your pond. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of having the sand there if it's just going to be at the bottom, and if your pond's 12 feet deep, you're not going to hang out down there. So another thing that we do highly recommend is that if you do have a private pond and you want to, say, you know, treat it for aquatic species, or you want to fish out of it and not have any kind of limits, we do advise to get a fish farm registration, private fish farm registration. That's a thing that you can get through DATCAP. That way, if we come out or another company comes out and treats your property for aquatic plants, we don't have to get through permits every single time that we come out. That fish farm registration, the private fish farm registration, is a one-time thing, but you have to renew it every year, rather than if we came out, you know, like once a month, we'd have to fill out that paperwork every time we came out to treat. So with ponds, like this one, for example, this one is very pretty to look at, really relaxing. You know, you can catch and release fish here. One of the main things that we do like to have with the new ponds that we put in is make sure we have some kind of soil erosion protection around the outside, some shore stabilization. We usually plant plants either in the pond with a liner or not. And then on the outside, one of the main things that I do is plant tall grass prairie seeds around the outside of the plant to keep that that soil in the same spot, rather than, you know, like over time it eventually kind of runs down. But if it has plants there or trees there even, it keeps the soil staying where it's supposed to stay instead of just running down to the bottom of your pond. And then you're really going to have to call us. Can you be like, hey, my pond was 12 feet deep and now it's only 6, like, can you come fix this? And that's generally another one of our big projects. We'll come out and dredge the pond for people because they have that issue, or just over time, you know, organic matter builds up and they don't have like the proper nutrients placed in the pond. That's another big, like, common occurrence. We usually come out and test, like, that's part of our pond consultant business, is that we'll come out and test your waters and then see what kind of things that we do to fix or make sure everything's balanced. If there's too much nitrogen or too much phosphorus in your pond, then we can treat it with adding correct bacteria and enzymes in there, or whatever other products that we need to make your pond look as good as it does. And I know Earlier, both Dan and Mark had mentioned that about 6 years ago they had only one water fountain out here with the aeration. So that's another big thing that we do like to emphasize is aeration, or water movement is very important in ponds and lakes too. Lakes, it's a little bit of a different story. We do have aeration systems in lakes. That also depends on the overall lake, the people that are in charge of lake, what their management perspectives are, what their objectives are. So aeration with lakes, generally the surface area is large enough for wind to create waves, and then the waves will disperse oxygen through that way. But with aeration systems, it keeps the constant movement of water, and that allows for your fish to get oxygenated. It allows for the bacteria that need oxygen to continually eat away at the stuff that's hanging out at the bottom of your pond. In addition to that, algae love stagnant water, and nobody likes to see algae. So if you want to keep your pond algae free, we highly suggest that aeration system. And you're probably thinking, well, if I have a pond in the middle of nowhere, how am I supposed to get electricity out there? Well, there are, I know a couple of people that I've talked to today too, they have a little solar, a solar powered operation hooked up to like a windmill or some kind of a wind forming thing. So there are those options. I know they're kind of a hit or miss with whether or not how well they work. But otherwise, my supervisor had about 40 acres of land that he had maybe a three acre lake on, and he had that electricity put in just specifically for that lake, and he had 2 diffusers out there, and he said that worked wonders on treating his lake. So along with aeration, pond management is not just a thing you can one and done. That's a continual process that you have to do. Like they mentioned, like 6 years ago, this was full of, they had a fish die off, and then it was full of plants. So in addition to helping the fish and then balancing the nutrients, it also kind of balances everything else out. There's not that many plants that can thrive with, I don't know where I'm going with that. Plants in the pond, they can survive off of pretty much anything, especially if they are invasive plants or aggressive plants like coontail. I'm sure most of you, if you've fished or been in any kind of shallow water, coontail is usually like that really kind of fuzzy stuff, and that definitely thrives in water that is not aerated very much. Another thing that's important about ponds, besides giving the great aesthetic view, it does has a carbon sequestration additive where it takes the carbon from the atmosphere and stores it. And it also collects rainwater, like the pond that's behind me is filled with runoff of rainwater. So it constantly has new water in there. That also helps to kind of keep down the, it helps with the, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for that. Let's see. Ponds also have a great additive to a forest. You know, they have their own ecology system. They're a great benefit to all animals, big, small, insects, birds, deer, turkey. You know, any animal that needs water to survive. In addition to that, you know, like with the plant thing, plants need sun and they need water and they need a space to live. So one of the main things that our company does, will come out and, like I said, do a water testing of your property, and then kind of give you a scientific plan as to how we're going to treat treat your property to get your pond looking like a pond again, instead of maybe it has a bunch of algae. Algae loves stagnant water. So when in the process of us filling these ponds, they're about 3/4 of the way full, and then we usually stop with the water, and then we'll place the sand around it, because we got to wait for the pond liner to kind of form to its new home. So we'll wait for a minute for that water to fill up to a certain level, and I have noticed during this pond process, the aeration system is not going at the time. And I've noticed that the pond water is green. I was like, well, it doesn't come out of the house green. It doesn't come out of the hose green. Why is it green? And I found out that because that water is just sitting there, there's so much nutrients in that water. It's just little tiny microscopic algae called phytoplankton that are just hanging out in that pond. And then once the aeration system is going, and then we usually add pond dye, and that makes so that the sun cannot penetrate through the water, makes it darker, so it's harder for the photosynthesis to happen. So that also will clear up that green color. Another big thing about pond management, like I said, it's not just a one-time deal. There's not one size that fits all kind of ponds. Every pond is different. Like this one, it has a lot of trees around it, which is great because it provides shade, but it also has a lot of leaves and a lot of leaf litter that could potentially make organic matter build up at the bottom of this pond. So it looks great, and I'm really glad it looks great. Like we just took over as clients, so I'm assuming they have some kind of bacteria and enzyme pumping into this lake to make it kind of equalized there. They have the 3 aeration systems as well, or the 1 aeration system, the 3 diffusers. So that makes sure that there's constant movement of the water, and gives all the proper bacteria that need to break down that muck and organic matter some life form too. So another thing with the fish, I don't know if you guys, how you stock your fish, but we do fish stocking regulations and stuff too, or recommendations. One thing to keep in mind with if you want to have your own fish to fish out of your pond is that you have to have a habitat for the big fish as well as for the small fish, because small fish cannot feed the big fish if the small fish don't have the right equipment to survive in their own little habitat. So every pond that we manage is different, has its own little quirks or has its own little problems maybe. We have 3 different programs that we usually offer to people. One, we can put you on a scheduled maintenance. We'll come out once a month and check your pond and treat it if it needs to be treated. The second one is we'll inform you of how to treat your pond yourself, and then we'll just drop products off. And then the third one is you're an on-call client, where you call us maybe once every 2 years and be like, hey, my pond looks really green, or it's full of this kind of weed, can you help me treat it? And then we'll come out and maybe have you send some pictures of the plant so we know which products to bring out, or if it's a small little area, there's a couple ways of treating aquatic species. One of them is hand pulling or raking. Sometimes that can get tedious. And the second one is, treating with herbicides. And not everybody wants to do herbicide treatment, but if you have a lake that's plumb full, or a pond that's plumb full of all kinds of weeds, that might take a really long time. And by the time you get to the one end, you're going to be like, oh, there's new green stuff sprouting at this end, so that might not be something that you want to deal with. So we're located out of Berlin, Wisconsin. It's a really tiny town, but like I said, we cover the whole state. Does anybody have any questions? Do you guys have any ponds yourself that you need something with? Or?
I got a question.
Yes.
Do you have your own equipment, or do you sub out?
It depends on the size of the pond. We have an excavator and 2 track loaders and a tractor. But so we usually do ponds anything from an acre or less. And then if it's bigger, like I said, that a 2-acre pond, it would take us forever to do with that half-a-yard bucket. So we are subcontracting that out currently, but we've worked with the people that are digging that right now. My boss has been working with them for about 20 years. So we usually have a lot of contacts. If you want sand, we have people that get washed sand. If you want rock delivered, if you want pretty much anything that you need done to your land or your water, like we have contacts throughout the whole state to be able to get that stuff done for you. So yes.
Amanda, could you talk a little bit about if somebody wanted to get emergent vegetation like this established on their pond, how would they do that to get some native plants that you would recommend for a pond like this?
Sure. I was able to identify some of them. That one over there is three-way sedge, and then one of them over here is it's a different kind of sedge. There's multiple kinds of sedges. We do actually sell a lot of aquatic plants, and we come out and we recommend some, and we'll plant them for you too once the pond level has gotten up to, or even on lakes. A couple weeks ago, I planted. It kind of looks like grass, but it's like sedge that's about this tall, and we kind of plant it in, and it kind of grows like a mat. So we'll come in and do all that kind of planting for you. We've also planted pickerel plant, which is kind of like it's an emergent one, and it comes up and has like a purple flower on it. I don't know what, it kind of looks like a mini corn stalk, mini corn, and it kind of comes up, but it's purple. But yeah, well, depending on the area, we usually always do native to Wisconsin plants. Obviously, we don't want to give you invasives, but that sometimes happens, like cattails can be treated as an invasive. But we'll come out and let's see, what else do we have? We have our own greenhouse, so we do a lot of our own prairie plantings and aquatic planting. We usually get them from a source, but then we grow them at our greenhouse and keep them watered, and so they're ready to go. And we do like water lily as well as some other kind of bulrushes we have. But that is another important thing. Like so, in addition to the prairie seed that we put on the outside, we do highly recommend putting aquatic plants in the pond itself, just to keep that extra shore stabilization. And then with those aquatic plants, the shore is less likely to be able to be eroded down. So we have lots of sedges and, like I said, bulrush, and then we have some like blue flag iris, or even like just red cardinal plant we have another one of, and then obedient plant, and those don't have to be necessarily submerged, but they can be like on just above the water line, and they are okay to be submerged sometimes, but just not all the time. So we can recommend all kinds of plants for that.
What about submergent plants? Is that something you guys do?
Submergent plants too, yep. We do have water lily, and that pickerel plant is also, and then some of the sedges or the bulrush also like to be like fully in there. I haven't planted too many of those, but I know some of those plants like to be out at least 5 feet. So we'll drain the water a little bit before we actually like plant them, and then go out and plant them, and then fill the water back up. So, and that doesn't matter if you have a lined pond or a non-lined pond. Over time, like for a newly built pond to become established, it takes about 3 years. So we'll start by planting the plants when the water level is at the right level to be able to plant these plants, but not all of them are going to survive, you know, kind of like the fittest will only survive kind of thing, the Darwinism. So we will start off by that, and then if we need new plants in the next year or the next couple years, we can provide you with more plants. Yes.
What if this was my pond and I said, Amanda, I want to grow wild rice out here for the ducks and the geese, harvesting for myself?
That I don't know off the top of my head with that, but I know the ducks and geese will definitely make your water not as clear as you want it to be.
What with muskrats, rodents, and rodent damage? Is there something people can do to control that?
I know I've had a few clients with that issue, and the only thing I could think of is either like trap them and move them off your property, or just constantly fix the holes. I don't know anything about with pond liners being an issue with that. I would assume.
I was wondering if that kind of stopped them.
I don't know. I haven't come across that yet.
Okay.
So, putting in a new pond, it's easy to do fish stocking.
Mm-hmm.
But what about all the other critters that might use it? The
Like
turtles,
salamanders and turtles and
dogs, yeah.
they just show up. You know, if you build it, they come. That's kind of like what I've noticed. The dog training ponds that we built a couple weeks or last fall, I went there to plant the aquatic plants a couple weeks ago, and there's snakes. There's a lot of prairie grass around it. There is plenty of frogs there, And it just, like I said, I don't know how they get there. I don't know if they have like a CNN for a frog network or something, because like, hey man, this new pond was built, come on check it out. Like, they just show up. I don't know if it's just because of like they get eggs get taken off of birds, or like the shorebirds or any kind of other water bird that will come around and they walk around and then they'll pick up some eggs and then they'll go to that pond. I don't know if maybe that's probably how they get there, but yeah, like I said, if you build it, they come. They just show up. So.
Do you recommend, if you have a pond for maintenance or try to fix it back up, do you recommend draining it and then working on the edges and then letting it fill back up again?
Like what kind of fixing are you talking?
Well, the edges that have just,
Just kind of eroded?
or just got shallower and built up
Um,
and so forth.
I mean, it would definitely be easier for construction equipment to get in there if you did drain it. But we just did dredging at it's a 1 acre pond, and we did dredging around the outside. Our excavator has a 16-foot reach, so we can't exactly get to the middle unless it is drained. So I guess it depends on how much material you want moved. If you want a lot of it moved out and you want it like all regraded again, then yes, I suggest probably draining it, or at least getting it to a lower level so that the machinery can get around it. But otherwise, if it's not, if you just want whatever the excavator can reach and not be able to like fully regrade it and just be able to do whatever the excavator can do, like to its best abilities. I mean, it's still a machinery. It's not like it can be fine graded or whatever. But then you can just leave the water in there.
So 16 feet back.
16-foot reach, and then
For how much?
16-foot reach out and then down. So
So you have some sort of way of controlling the water level in the ponds that you construct?
yes and no. I know for like this one has a water control structure. We don't actually, in the ponds that we build now, I guess I'm not even sure how it would drain them and
Yeah, so it's not drained.
and try to fix them. I know we have an outflow, just so that if it does like overflow, it has somewhere to exit. But as far as fully draining it, I'm sure there's a way. I just don't know off the top of my head.
Well, the way that somebody told me, the excavator said they could put a pump on it with a
Oh.
3-inch hose.
Yeah, just put a pump on it and
About an acre pond in 2 days. I mean,
yeah.
With the 3-inch.
Yeah, that's kind of like one of the issues that we're running into at the place that we have the big excavator at, is that it keeps raining down there, and it's kind of hard to move equipment when it keeps raining. So we do have one of our trash pumps down there, and that has about a 300-foot hose length. So I guess that's how you do it. Just use a pump and have some time to pump it out. It goes out and
Downhill.
collects wherever.
Yeah, downhill.
To the neighbors. Hopefully you don't have to take the water out of your pond, but yeah, we'll go somewhere else then.
All ponds would need some kind of natural spring though, wouldn't they?
Not necessarily, no. We usually do either just the rainwater, like those dog training ponds. They are within the water table, but they also are just filled with rainwater. And then a lot of our other clients, they either have a well put in specifically for their pond, or they just use the well off of their house, and we just modify the hose a little bit, because a little garden hose is going to take forever to fill up. Otherwise, we have the homeowner or the landowner, like I said, modify either their well pump or get a bigger hose just so the pump doesn't burn out. And then once it's filled, we won't have to keep continuously filling it. Evaporation will happen over time, but you're not going to. It's just kind of a one-time deal unless you do end up draining it.
Does your company also do dry dams that just take care, like down in the southern part where we've got a lot of topography? It's common to put in dry dams, and sometimes those will hold water all the time, sometimes they don't. But
I haven't experienced any of that, but I could look into it. We have one of our field stations is in southwest Wisconsin in Muscadet.
okay.
So we have, like I said, a vast area of the state that we cover. So.
Our land is about 5 miles from Muscadet.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I can look into that for you if you want to take my card, or I can
I'll
write.
take your card and I'll just check in with you.
Yeah, sure. That'd be no problem. Oh, I do have papers up here too about pond construction and design, pond management programs, the license and permits for your pond, like that fish farm, fish farm registration I was talking about. The benefits of a wildlife pond, you know, wildlife scrapes, if you want to enhance your wetland areas. We also do some of those. Common in pond problems and effective solutions. Most of the problems that we do come up with is, like I said, that just runs over, and people like, hey, my pond's built up over time, can you come dredge it out? Like, that's pretty much one of our main issues that we're going with. And then importance of fish habitat, like I said, if you want little fish to be able to feed the big fish, you got to provide the little fish habitats and place for them to survive and thrive and do all the good stuff. So